She didn't know the Korean man sitting alone in the corner booth was Seoul's most feared mafia boss. Didn't know his enemies called him the Silent Blade, or that he'd killed 17 men before turning 30. All she knew was that his dark eyes followed her across the dimly lit restaurant floor with an intensity that made her skin burn, and when their fingers brushed as she set down his whiskey, something ancient and irrevocable sparked between them, a recognition that felt like destiny and damnation wrapped in silk. He looked at her like she was oxygen and he'd been drowning his entire life. Welcome to Unfold Korean Stories. Please like, share, and subscribe and comment where you are watching from. Zuri Williams wiped down table after table at the Azure Pearl, Seoul's most exclusive restaurant where the elite came to see and be seen. Her curves filled out her server's uniform in ways that made some customers stare too long, but she'd learned to ignore them. She was here to work, to save money, to survive in a country that wasn't her own. The late shift paid better, even if it meant dealing with demanding customers who treated servers like furniture. The man in booth 7 had been watching her for 20 minutes. She felt his gaze like heat against her spine every time she passed. Dark suit, darker eyes, sitting alone with untouched whiskey while everyone else in the restaurant laughed and networked. He looked expensive, dangerous, utterly still, like a predator waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Table 7 needs service, her manager hissed, pushing her forward with barely concealed nervousness. And be polite. Very polite. Zuri straightened her shoulders and approached, notepad ready. Up close he was devastating, sharp jawline, full lips, eyes that seemed to see straight through her professional smile into something deeper. His suit probably cost more than she made in 6 months, tailored perfectly to broad shoulders and a lean frame that suggested violence beneath the civility. Good evening, sir. What can I? Sit down. His voice was low, accented, absolute command wrapped in velvet. She blinked. I'm sorry. Your feet hurt. You've been standing for 6 hours. He gestured to the seat across from him with long fingers. Sit. How did he know her shift length? Zuri glanced around nervously. The manager was watching from across the room, frowning, but something in this man's presence made people hesitate to intervene. Even the other servers gave booth 7 a wide berth. I can't, I'm working. I own this restaurant. Matter of fact, no boasting. Just simple truth delivered like a blade. Sit down, Zuri. Her name in his mouth sent electricity down her spine. She'd never told him her name. The name tag, she glanced down. Right. Still, the way he said it felt intimate, possessive, like he'd been saying it in his mind for hours, tasting each syllable. Against every instinct screaming caution, she slid into the booth. Better. His eyes traveled over her face, cataloging every detail with the precision of a man who missed nothing. You've been here 3 months. You work doubles on Thursdays. You eat 1 meal a day, never enough. You send most of your pay home to Ghana. Ice flooded her veins. How do you know? I make it my business to know everything about what interests me. He leaned forward slightly, and she caught the scent of his cologne, cedar and smoke and something darker. And you, Zuri Williams, interest me very much. She should leave. Should report this to someone. But his gaze held her captive, and beneath the fear was something else. Curiosity, attraction, a pull she couldn't name. There was danger in his stillness but also loneliness. She recognized it because she carried the same emptiness. Who are you? Kang Min-ho. He said it like she should recognize the name. She didn't. Should I know you? Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, pleasure, relief. No. That's refreshing. His fingers drummed once against the table, the only sign of emotion. Most people in Seoul know my name. Fear it. Why would they fear a restaurant owner? His smile was slow, dangerous, beautiful. Because I own much more than restaurants. The weight of that statement settled between them. Zuri knew she should press for details, should understand what she was walking into. But part of her didn't want to know. Didn't want reality to shatter whatever this moment was. Why are you watching me? She asked instead. Because I can't look away. Raw honesty. I came here 3 weeks ago for a business dinner. Saw you laughing with a customer while you took their order. You have this way of making people feel seen. Important. And I thought. He paused, jaw tightening. I thought I'd forgotten what that felt like. Being seen as something other than a monster. Her breath caught. You're not a monster. You don't know that. I know you haven't touched your whiskey. I know you asked me to sit instead of demanding. I know you're lonely. She surprised herself with the boldness. That doesn't make you a monster. Just human. Min-ho's expression shifted, something vulnerable breaking through the armor. What time do you finish tonight? Midnight. I'll wait. You don't have to. I want to. Simple. Absolute. Let me drive you home. Make sure you get there safely. Red flags should have been waving. Strange man, position of power, too much interest too fast. But Zuri found herself nodding, found herself wanting to know more about the lonely man in the expensive suit, who looked at her like she was light in his darkness. The rest of her shift passed in a blur. She felt Min-ho's eyes tracking her movements, protective and possessive all at once. When drunk businessman got too handsy, she noticed him tense, noticed how quickly the manager intervened. When another server dropped a tray, Min-ho's security appeared from nowhere to help clean up. Security. He had security watching him, watching her. At midnight, Zuri changed out of her uniform in the staff room, hands shaking slightly. Ji-won, her roommate who also worked at the Azure Pearl, grabbed her arm. Are you insane? Ji-won hissed. Do you know who that man is? He said his name is Kang Min-ho. He's the head of the Kang family, one of Seoul's most powerful crime organizations. Ji-won's eyes were wide with fear. Zuri, he's dangerous. Like kills people who cross him, dangerous. The words should have sent her running. Instead, they crystallized something she'd already sensed. The danger, the power, the way people moved around him like prey avoiding a predator. Has he hurt anyone here? Zuri asked quietly. What? No, but. Has he been cruel? Violent? Threatening? Ji-won hesitated. No. Actually, since he started coming here, tips have been better. Staff gets treated well. Some drunk asshole who grabbed a server's ass last week was banned for life. She paused. But that doesn't mean he's safe, Zuri. I know. Zuri finished tying her shoes. But I'm going anyway. Why? Because loneliness recognized loneliness. Because she'd spent 2 years in Seoul feeling invisible, expendable, working herself to exhaustion for scraps. And for the first time someone saw her. Really saw her. Because he asked, Zuri said simply. Min-ho waited by the back entrance, leaning against a black Mercedes that probably cost more than her entire apartment building. When he saw her, he straightened, opening the passenger door with old-fashioned courtesy. You came. You waited. His smile was brief but genuine. I said I would. The car's interior was leather and luxury, silent and smooth as they pulled into Seoul's nighttime traffic. Min-ho drove with the same controlled precision he did everything else, one hand on the wheel, the other resting near the gear shift. Your friend warned you about me, he observed. Not a question. Yes. And you came anyway. Yes. He glanced at her, something warm flickering in his dark eyes. Brave or foolish? Haven't decided yet. Zuri watched the city lights blur past. Tell me something true about yourself. Something that has nothing to do with fear or power. Min-ho was quiet for a long moment. I can't sleep. Haven't had a full night's rest in 3 years. Not since my father died and I inherited this empire built on blood and terror. I lie awake wondering if this is all there is. Violence and loneliness until someone finally puts a bullet in my head. The confession was raw, unexpected. Zuri reached out instinctively, her hand covering his on the gear shift. He inhaled sharply but didn't pull away. I work myself to exhaustion so I'm too tired to feel empty, she offered in return. Send money home so at least someone benefits from my suffering. Tell myself it's enough. But it's not. No, Min-ho agreed softly. It's not. They pulled up outside her shabby apartment building. Zuri expected him to say goodnight, to drive away to whatever penthouse fortress he called home. Instead, he cut the engine. I want to see you again, he said, turning to face her fully. Tomorrow. And the day after. And every day until you tell me to stop. That's too much. Too fast. Too intense. His hand lifted, fingers brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. I know. But I'm not good at pretending, Zuri. Not with you. You do something to me. Make me want things I thought were impossible. What things? Peace. Happiness. A reason to wake up that isn't revenge or duty. His thumb traced her jaw. You. She should be terrified. Should recognize the obsession forming, the possessiveness in his touch. But all she felt was wanted. Seen. Cherished in a way she'd never experienced. Okay, she whispered. Okay. Tomorrow. Come to the restaurant. We'll talk more. Min-ho's smile was brilliant, transforming his face from dangerous to devastatingly handsome. I'll be there. He walked her to her door, waited until she was safely inside, then drove away into the Seoul night. Zuri leaned against the door, heart pounding, knowing her life had just changed irrevocably. The next morning, she woke to find an envelope slipped under her door. Inside, 3 months' salary in crisp bills and a note in elegant handwriting. You work too hard. Take care of yourself. Her hands shook. This was too much money, too forward, too everything. She should return it. But the weight of debt back home pressed down. Her sister's school fees, her mother's medical bills, the crushing responsibility of being the family's only hope. She kept the money. God help her, she kept it. That evening, Min-ho returned to booth 7. Same time, same untouched whiskey, same predatory stillness. But when Zuri approached, his eyes held something new, satisfaction mixed with possessive warmth. You kept it. I'm going to pay you back. No, you're not. He gestured for her to sit again. This time she did without argument, sliding into the booth like it was already habit. Consider it a gift. I don't accept gifts from strangers. Then get to know me. His voice dropped, intimate and compelling. Sit with me every night. Talk to me. Let me learn what makes you smile, what makes you angry, what you dream about when you're alone at 3 in the morning. Her pulse hammered. Why? Because the moment I saw you, something inside me recognized something inside you. His honesty was brutal, raw. I don't understand it. I don't question it. I just know I need to be near you. That when I'm not, the world feels grayer. Emptier. Over the following week, it became routine. Zuri would finish her rounds, then slide into booth 7 for stolen half-hours where Min-ho asked questions and listened like her words were scripture. He never touched her beyond accidental brushes of hands, but the air between them crackled with tension so thick she could barely breathe. She learned he was 32, ran his family's business empire, after his father's death at the hands of a rival family, that he lived alone in a penthouse overlooking the Han River despite having a dozen properties, that he spoke 4 languages, hated crowds, and hadn't smiled genuinely in 5 years. Until you, he said one night, his gaze intense enough to burn. You make me want to remember how. She learned he had a younger sister in Japan, kept far from the family business, that his mother had died when he was 12, leaving him to be raised by his father's brutal expectations, that he read philosophy and listened to classical music and had never been in love. I didn't think I was capable of it, he admitted. Love requires vulnerability, and vulnerable men in my world end up dead. What changed? Zuri asked softly. You. Simple. Devastating. I'd rather be vulnerable with you than safe and alone. The next day, roses arrived at her apartment. 2 dozen blood red with another note. These reminded me of your smile. Ji-won whistled low. Girl, he's got it bad. It's just flowers. Those are I'm obsessed and have money to prove it flowers. Ji-won examined the blooms with expert eyes. I'm worried about you, Zuri. Men like him. They don't do casual. Once you're in completely. Maybe I want to be in. Even knowing what he is? Zuri thought about the loneliness in Min-ho's eyes, the way he looked at her like she was salvation. Especially knowing what he is. Because someone should see past the monster to the man. That night, she wore the dress Min-ho had also sent. Designer silk that hugged her curves perfectly, making her feel beautiful and powerful. When she arrived at the Azure Pearl, every eye turned. But she only cared about one pair of eyes. Min-ho stood when he saw her, something fierce and possessive blazing across his face. He crossed the restaurant in long strides, stopping just short of touching her. You're wearing my dress. You have good taste. I have perfect taste. His voice was rough. You're the most beautiful woman I've ever seen. She felt heat flood her cheeks. Min-ho, have dinner with me. Not here. Somewhere private where I can actually talk to you without the entire restaurant watching. That sounds like a date. It is a date. He stepped closer, voice dropping. I'm courting you, Zuri. Making my intentions clear. I want you. Not for a night, not for a casual thing. I want all of you. Her breath caught. You barely know me. I know enough. I know you're brave and kind. That you work yourself to exhaustion for family who take you for granted. That you hide your intelligence because people underestimate you otherwise. His hand lifted, fingertips brushing her jaw. I know you're lonely too. That you understand what it's like to be surrounded by people, but utterly alone. Yes, she whispered. Then let me end that loneliness. For both of us. She nodded, unable to form words. Min-ho's smile was victorious, tender, dangerous all at once. Tomorrow night. I'll pick you up at 7. The next evening, Zuri dressed carefully in another outfit that had mysteriously appeared. This time emerald green that made her dark skin glow. When Min-ho arrived precisely at 7, he looked at her like she'd hung the moon. Perfect, he murmured, offering his arm. Absolutely perfect. He took her to a private restaurant on the top floor of one of Seoul's most exclusive buildings. The entire place had been reserved just for them. Candles flickered on a table by the window, the city spreading below like scattered diamonds. You reserved the whole restaurant? Zuri asked, breathless. I wanted you to myself. No interruptions, no watching eyes. Just us. He pulled out her chair with old-world courtesy. Is it too much? Everything about you is too much. But she was smiling. I'm starting to like it. Dinner was perfection. Courses that melted on her tongue. Wine that tasted like starlight. But the food paled next to the conversation. Min-ho asked about her childhood in Ghana. Her dreams before survival became all that mattered. He listened with absolute focus, asking follow-up questions that showed he genuinely cared. In return, she learned more about him. The weight of expectation that had crushed him since childhood. The violence he'd witnessed, participated in, become numb to. The fear that he was fundamentally broken, incapable of normal human connection. You're not broken, Zuri said firmly, reaching across the table to take his hand. You're surviving in an impossible situation. That's different. His fingers tightened around hers. You see goodness in me I'm not sure exists. It exists. I see it every time you make sure I eat. Every time you wait to drive me home. Every time you look at me like I'm precious. You are precious. His voice was fierce. The most precious thing in my world. After dinner, he drove her home slowly, like he was reluctant for the evening to end. At her door, he walked her up the stairs despite her protests. I need to know you're safe inside, he said simply. At her apartment door, Zuri turned to thank him. Found him closer than expected. His eyes dark with want. I'm going to kiss you now, he said, giving her time to refuse. Tell me if you don't want this. She answered by rising on her toes, closing the distance between them. The kiss was gentle at first, soft pressure, careful exploration. Then Min-ho's control fractured. His hands cupped her face, angling her exactly where he wanted. Kiss deepening into something consuming. Zuri gasped against his mouth, and he swallowed the sound, pressing her back against her door. I've been thinking about this for weeks, he breathed against her lips. Dreaming about how you'd taste. And, better than dreaming. He kissed her again, slower this time, reverent. So much better. When they finally broke apart, both breathless, Min-ho rested his forehead against hers. I should go before I do something we're not ready for. What if I'm ready? His eyes blazed. Don't say things like that unless you mean them. I mean them. Zuri unlocked her door, pulling him inside. Stay. Zuri woke wrapped in Egyptian cotton sheets she definitely didn't own, in a bedroom flooded with morning light from floor to ceiling windows. For a disorienting moment, she couldn't remember where she was. Then she felt the warm body beside her, the strong arm draped across her waist. Min-ho. Memory flooded back. How he'd been gentle and consuming all at once, worshipping her body like she was sacred, murmuring Korean endearments against her skin until she trembled. How he'd made her first time feel like a claiming and a surrender, possession and protection all tangled together. She must have fallen asleep. He must have brought her to his penthouse. "You're awake." Min-ho's voice was rough with sleep, his arm tightening around her. "How do you feel?" "Like my life just changed completely." It did. He pressed a kiss to her shoulder. "You're mine now. I'm keeping you." The possessiveness should have alarmed her. Instead, warmth bloomed in her chest. "That's simple. That's simple." He turned her to face him, and she saw absolute certainty in his eyes. "I know it's fast. I know we barely know each other. But I've never been more sure of anything. You're it for me, Zuri. Min-ho. Move in with me." Her breath caught. "What?" "Move in. Today. Let me take care of you properly." His hand cupped her face. "I can't stand the thought of you in that tiny apartment, working yourself to exhaustion, struggling. Let me give you everything." "That's insane. We've known each other 2 weeks." "I don't care." His voice was steel-wrapped in silk. 2 weeks, 2 months, 2 years, the timeline doesn't matter. What matters is that you're mine and I'm yours, and I want you here. Safe. Protected. Cherished. Part of Zuri knew she should refuse. Should demand time, space, normalcy. But she'd never felt safer than she did in his arms, never felt more wanted or seen. "Okay," she whispered. Min-ho's kiss was gratitude and possession. "I'll have your things moved today. I should tell Ji-won. Already handled. I sent her 6 months' rent as compensation for losing a roommate." He smiled at her expression. "I told you. I take care of what's mine." The following weeks were a blur of adjustments. Zuri quit the Azure Pearl, despite Min-ho offering to buy it just so she could keep working if she wanted. Instead, he enrolled her in university, the degree she'd abandoned when money ran out, and installed her in his penthouse with instructions to the staff that she was to be treated like royalty. "I'm not comfortable with people serving me," she protested as a housekeeper tried to make her breakfast. "Then think of them as helping you," Min-ho said, pulling her onto his lap at the breakfast table. "So you can focus on your studies instead of exhausting yourself." Life with Min-ho was intense, overwhelming and addictive. He was possessive and protective, assigning guards to follow her everywhere, vetting her professors, installing panic buttons throughout the penthouse. When she complained about smothering, he'd simply kiss her until she forgot to argue. But he was also tender and attentive. He remembered how she took her coffee, bought books he thought she'd enjoy, cleared his schedule to help her study. At night, he'd hold her close and talk about dreams for a future she'd never dared imagine. "I want to marry you," he said one night, fingers tracing patterns on her bare shoulder. "We barely know each other. I know everything that matters. I know you're brave and kind, that you have a terrible singing voice but love music anyway, that you cry at sad movies and argue politics with passion." He tilted her face up. "I know I want to wake up next to you for the rest of my life." "Ask me again in 6 months, Zuri said, though her heart raced. "I'll ask you every day until you say yes." True to his word, he proposed daily in small ways, leaving notes that said, "Marry me," with her coffee, texting the question randomly, asking over dinner like it was casual conversation. It became their routine, their private joke that wasn't really a joke at all. But tension still simmered beneath their happiness. 3 months into their relationship, Zuri attended a university event where a classmate, handsome, charming, completely unaware of who she belonged to, asked her to study together. "I'd like to get to know you better," he said with practiced ease. "Maybe over coffee?" Before Zuri could politely decline, Min-ho appeared from nowhere, sliding an arm around her waist with possessive certainty. "She's taken," he said, voice pleasant but eyes promising violence. The student paled, recognizing him. "Mr. Kang, I didn't realize." "Now you do." Min-ho's grip on Zuri tightened. "Spread the word. She's under my protection. Anyone who looks at her wrong answers to me." After the student fled, Zuri turned to Min-ho. "That was excessive. That was necessary." His jaw was tight with barely controlled jealousy. "Do you know how many men want you? How it drives me insane watching them look at what's mine. I'm not property. You're mine." He cupped her face, forcing her to meet his blazing eyes. "Mine to protect. Mine to cherish. Mine to love. And I don't share." That night he made love to her with desperate intensity, marking her skin with kisses, whispering possessive claims until she shattered beneath him. For months in, danger finally found them. Zuri was leaving class when a black van pulled up beside her. Before Min-ho's guards could react, men with guns emerged, grabbing her and throwing her inside. She fought, screaming, but there were too many. The last thing she saw was her guard bleeding on the sidewalk, phone pressed to his ear, calling Min-ho. She woke in a concrete room, wrists zip-tied to a metal chair. 3 men stood around her, speaking Korean too rapid for her limited understanding. One noticed her stirring and smiled, all teeth, no warmth. Awake. Good. We have questions about Kang Min-ho. Terror clawed up her throat. I don't know anything. You live with him. Sleep in his bed. You know plenty. The man crouched before her. His routines, his security, his weaknesses. Tell us and we'll let you go. I won't. A slap cracked across her face. Pain exploded, stars bursting behind her eyes. She tasted copper, felt tears streaming. Don't lie. Why else would Korea's most dangerous man keep a foreign nobody unless she was useful? Another slap. Then another. Zuri's vision blurred, her face on fire. Then the door exploded inward with a deafening crash. Min-ho stood in the doorway like an avenging angel, gun raised, face carved from rage and murder. Bodies dropped behind him. He'd already killed everyone between her and freedom. You touched her. His voice was death itself. You made her bleed. The man who'd hit her scrambled backward. Wait, we can negotiate. The gunshot was deafening. The man dropped, dead before he hit the ground. The other 2 tried to run. Min-ho shot them both with clinical precision, then holstered his weapon and crossed to Zuri in long strides. Are you hurt? His hands were everywhere, cutting her restraints, checking for injuries with frantic gentleness. Did they? Tell me they didn't. Just my face, Zuri gasped. Min-ho, you killed. They took you. Hurt you. Touched what's mine. He cupped her face with trembling hands, his eyes wild. I would burn this entire world for you. Kill anyone who threatens you. Do you understand? There is nothing I won't do to keep you safe. She should be horrified. Should recognize the monster everyone warned her about. But all she felt was protected, cherished, safe. Take me home, she whispered. Min-ho lifted her into his arms like she weighed nothing, carrying her past the carnage he'd created without a second glance. His driver had the car running, and they sped through Seoul streets toward the penthouse. Once home, Min-ho drew a bath, helping her undress with careful hands. When she winced at the bruises forming, his expression went cold. I'm going to find everyone connected to this, he said quietly. And I'm going to make them suffer. Min-ho. No. Steel in his voice. They hurt you. That requires blood. Over the next week, Seoul's underworld learned a brutal lesson. The Park family, Min-ho's rivals who'd orchestrated the kidnapping, was systematically destroyed. Their businesses burned, their allies scattered, their leadership executed. It was swift, merciless, and absolute. Min-ho came home each night with blood on his hands, but he was always gentle with Zuri, holding her close and whispering apologies for bringing danger into her life. I should let you go, he said one night, his face buried in her neck. You'd be safer without me. I'd be miserable without you. She turned in his arms. I'm not leaving, Min-ho. Not because of danger, not because of fear. I chose you. I'm choosing you still. Even knowing what I am? Especially knowing. She kissed him softly. Because I see who you are beneath the violence. The man who holds me while I cry, who helps me study, who looks at me like I'm his entire world. His kiss was desperate, consuming. Marry me. Tomorrow. Next week. I don't care when, but marry me. Let me make you mine legally, permanently. Yes. The answer came without hesitation. Yes, I'll marry you. They married 2 weeks later in a private ceremony overlooking the Han River. Zuri wore white silk that Min-ho had commissioned from a designer, and he wore a traditional Korean hanbok that made him look like a prince from ancient times. When the officiant pronounced them married, Min-ho kissed his bride like she was oxygen, like he'd been drowning and she was his first breath. Seoul's most dangerous men watched and applauded, because even killers recognize true love. You're mine now, Min-ho whispered against her lips. Legally, officially, permanently mine. I've been yours since that first night in the restaurant, Zuri whispered back. 1 year later, Zuri stood in their bathroom, staring at 2 pink lines on a pregnancy test. Her hands shook. They'd talked about children someday, but Min-ho's world was still dangerous. How could they protect a baby? She found him in his office reviewing contracts. When he looked up and saw her expression, he was around the desk immediately. What's wrong? Wordlessly, she handed him the test. Min-ho stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly, reverently, he sank to his knees before her, pressing his forehead to her still flat stomach. We're having a baby, he whispered, voice thick with emotion. Are you happy? Happy. He looked up, tears streaming down his face. I'm terrified. Overwhelmed. And I've never been happier in my life. The pregnancy was beautiful and complicated. Min-ho became even more protective, practically wrapping her in bubble wrap. Guards tripled, security measures became absurd, and he vetted every doctor in Seoul before selecting the best. I'm pregnant, not fragile, Zuri protested after he tried to carry her up a single stair. You're carrying my child. Your precious cargo. He kissed her forehead. Let me take care of you. At 4 months, they learned they were having a girl. Min-ho cried again, overwhelmed by the thought of a daughter. She'll have your eyes, he murmured, hand on Zuri's growing belly. Your strength. Your beautiful heart. And your stubbornness. God help us both. But at 7 months, Min-ho's rivals made one final play. Men stormed Zuri's prenatal appointment, overpowering her guards. She fought desperately, terrified for her baby, but they were too strong. Then Min-ho arrived with his entire organization, a small army descending with brutal force. The battle was swift and bloody. When the last attacker fell, Min-ho reached Zuri just as her knees buckled. He caught her, lowering them both to the ground, hands frantically checking her stomach. The baby, is she? She's moving, Zuri gasped, feeling their daughter kick. She's okay. Min-ho pressed his ear to her belly, and she felt him shudder with relief when their daughter kicked against his cheek. This ends tonight, he said, voice deadly calm. No more threats. No more mercy. That night, Min-ho launched a coordinated strike that eliminated every rival family in Seoul. It was brutal, absolute, and left no room for future challenges. By dawn, the city's underworld knew. Kang Min-ho's family was sacred, untouchable. The final months passed peacefully. Zuri's belly grew round and heavy. Min-ho attended every appointment, felt every kick, talked to their daughter through Zuri's skin. I promise to protect you, he'd whisper. To give you everything. To be worthy of you. Labor came during a thunderstorm. Zuri's water broke during dinner, and Min-ho went pale, fumbling for his phone while trying to help her to the car. Breathe, he kept saying, though he looked more panicked than her. At the hospital, the one Min-ho had essentially bought, complications arose. The baby's heart rate dropped. Emergency C-section. Min-ho's face drained of color. Zuri grabbed his hand. I'll be okay. We'll be okay. You better be, he said fiercely, kissing her hard. Because I can't exist without you. They wheeled her to surgery. Min-ho paced the waiting room like a caged animal until finally, a doctor emerged smiling. Congratulations, Mr. Kang. You have a healthy baby girl. And Zuri. Perfect. Tired but perfect. He ran to the recovery room, finding Zuri exhausted but radiant, holding a tiny bundle wrapped in pink. Meet your daughter, she said softly. Min-ho approached like the baby was made of glass, carefully taking her. She was tiny, perfect, with Zuri's nose and dark hair. When she opened her eyes, Zuri's eyes exactly. She's beautiful, he breathed, tears streaming. Like her mother. We're naming her Minna. It means beautiful. Perfect. He kissed Zuri gently, their daughter sleeping between them. You're both perfect. The first months were chaos, sleepless nights, constant feedings, overwhelming love. But Min-ho was present for everything, changing diapers, walking floors at 3 a.m., singing Korean lullabies. You're surprisingly good at this, Zuri observed. I protect what's mine, he said, expertly soothing their crying daughter. You two are my everything. On Minna's first birthday, continue 01 to 53, Min-ho threw a celebration that brought together family and organization. Zuri watched him hold court with their daughter on his hip, Seoul's most dangerous man making silly faces to hear her giggle. That night, after Min-ho was asleep, Min-ho pulled Zuri onto the balcony. "Do you remember the first night we met?" he asked. "I remember thinking you were the most dangerous man I'd ever seen." "I was. I still am." He turned her to face him. "But you made me want to be more. Someone worthy of you." He dropped to one knee. Zuri's breath caught. "Min-ho, we're already married." "I know." He pulled out a new ring, a stunning diamond. "But I never properly proposed. I was too desperate, too afraid of losing you." He took her hand. "Zuri Williams, Kang, you saved my life. Gave me a family, a reason to be better. Will you let me spend the rest of my life proving I'm worthy of you?" "Yes," she laughed through tears. "Always yes." 5 years later they had 2 more children. A son named Ji-hoon and another daughter, Soo-min. Their family was chaos and love. The penthouse filled with laughter Min-ho had never imagined possible. He transitioned the family business toward legitimate enterprises, using his power to protect rather than destroy. Still feared, still dangerous, but now that danger protected Koreatown, built schools, funded hospitals. One evening, Zuri found him reading bedtime stories to all 3 children, and her heart swelled. "What?" he asked, catching her watching. "Just remembering the lonely man I met in that restaurant booth." "He was drowning," Min-ho said softly. "Then you appeared like light. Best decision I ever made. Best decision I ever made was letting you see the real me." They stood surrounded by sleeping children, city lights glowing beyond the windows, marveling at the impossible journey. From loneliness to love, darkness to light, death to life. All because a courageous woman had seen past his armor. Because she'd chosen him despite the danger, loved him despite the fear. "Thank you," he whispered. "For what?" "Everything. For seeing me. Saving me. Giving me this life." "We saved each other," Zuri said, and it was true. That night, with their children sleeping peacefully and Seoul spreading below, Kang Min-ho held his wife and knew he was the luckiest man alive. Not because of power or money or fear, but because of love. Because of her. Because of the family they'd built against all odds. And that was worth more than any empire. Please like, share, and subscribe. Comments telling me your thoughts about this story.